Will do that. Thank you very much.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So I will repeat it. Assalamu alaikum. It's 8 o'clock. So this is one of the series of webinars sponsored by the Saudi Society of Medical Education's Riyadh chapter. And feedback is a cornerstones of improvement of any training program under or post grad. In matter of fact, formative assessment solely depends on feedback. Feedback is an art, and all the people participating in the process of education should know how to give a good feedback. Study have shown the medical education's literatures su suggested that feedback is the most important factors for improvement of any educations. In matter of fact, candidate going through the educations. So who's the best person to talk about a good feedback from uh, up-to-date perspective is the speakers. I'm honored to present my colleague is Dr. Abdul Mohsin Al Umair. He is the PhD and master degree in medical education from the United Kingdom. He is the assistant professors of medical educations and recently has been appointed as the head of medical education department at King Faisal University in Al Ahsa. So Dr. Amir, most of his interest was in feedback. And without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic to Dr. Abdul Mohsin for his presentation. Should be any questions, you can post it in the chat box or feel free to ask by opening the mic at the end of the presentation. Dr. Abdul Mohsin, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. Actually, the first point that I would like to say, it's kind of you, Dr. Ali, to have this great introduction. I really appreciate how you introduce our speaking today. Yes, I am interested in the feedback. It is something that I really like. From my experience, since I was a student, undergraduate student, until the PhD life. However, I consider myself honestly a learner in that field. We are all of us learn from each other from our experience. Uh, I like the feedback. I found it interesting topic through my study, so I am very happy today to speaking about this topic. So okay, this is our content today. Um, uh, we will have just short introduction. Just this is a big umbrella of our today speaking. We will have a short introduction at the beginning. One of the important part of our speaking today is to speak or to talk about a problem with feedback. And I really believe that when we talk about effective practice, when we talk about good things, I would like from myself as a learner and as a speaker to see the wrong things to the dark side. So it's not only to go to the white one. However, we should go and see the dark also, sorry, light and dark. So I would start with the problem with feedback. And honestly, through all of my speaking today, I really like some sources of feedback. I found it through my research. Very key authors. They have very cool authors. One of these resources is the Feedback in Higher and Professional Education book. This is the title of the book, edited by Bode and Molloy. And as you can see, as you will see, we will have some quote from this book. After that, the most important actually the corner or the core section is the best practice. And in that section, I base that section on different key framework and recommendation from literature. They are key authors. They are key literature. They are sharing the same point that I am trying today to speak about and to deliver it to you. They are talking about, they are sharing the same idea, but they just present it in different way. For this reason, I liked to present these three. At the end, we will have just a one slide, just talk about factor and challenges that can control or we can face during our practice. So just regarding the best practice, we will talk about Hattie and Temperley framework. It's very key resource of feedback. Then we will see how Nicole and McFarlane, they specifically give us some ideas and principles about how to experience or how to practice feedback and formative assessment, which is very important things to know. And also they targeted self-regulated learning. So how we can use the feedback to develop these skills. We will end, or we will finish our today speaking with Bod and Molloy marks of feedback. They present the feedback with 2 marks, a traditional mark and recommended mark. And the recommended mark actually will reflect or reflecting the Nicole and Hattie and Temperley work. So we will see that through our discussion. I know this is the beginning and we are now 27 participants. Dr. Ali, just maybe in 2, 3, maximum 4 minutes, I just would like to see through chat. I don't know if that is possible, Dr. Ali, or you advise me to
No, you can go ahead and anyone can open the mic and talk with you. Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yes, I just want to see, just for brainstorming, I just want to read your mind. If I ask, what's the good feedback as you perceive or as you think? How does it look like? Also, the opposite, what's the bad one? You can answer any one of these questions through the chatting or through the microphone. It's up to you. It's something optional if you would like me to continue to the next slide, but I just would like to see your point. So I just reading the chat here. Good feedback is constructive and positive. Good. Sandwich model is good one. Okay. So timely. Dr. Ahmed Al-Hadithi, I believe. Timely. Not personal. It's nice. Pendleton, the best. Nice. Not judgmental. Nice. Good feedback should motivate the learner. Nice. Bidirectional. Oh, yes. Interesting. Which improve performance. Immediate. Helpful for student to progress. The bad one is a full of negative, so unbalanced one, so only negative, and discouraging. Yes, nice. These are these very good comment actually. I really like these. So, okay. All of us, since we registered in this topic, I believe that we are interested in this one. It's just to mention that, or to confirm, the feedback is something that we cannot, or maybe we not properly develop ourselves and others without. So the feedback is something that the Bod and Molloy call it as mechanism of a student to discover if they're successful in their work or not. And it is really matter to see that section or that point of medical education, because through the literature we found that there are some shortcomings in experience this feedback. So based on just one study, I know it's only one study based on quantitative, half of the participants, they mentioned that they are not receiving good one, they are receiving poor one. It is based on clerkship, so it's end of undergraduate life of medical education. So it gives us some idea. It's also based on Saudi study. So it gives us the feeling that we should consider this point and develop it. And this is the resource that I really like and recommend in the feedback. In addition to the next one or next some resources that I will mention later. So at the beginning, so what's the problem with feedback before going to the best practice? The first one that Bod and Molloy mentioned in their book, it is the problem of sharing meaning. Just one second. Yes, the problem of sharing meaning. So we are, as educator, when we give the feedback, the receiver or the student, the trainee will receive it definitely. However, to what extent we are sure that they got the meaning? To what extent that we sure that we have sharing the same meaning of the feedback? So we may give the feedback, however, the student just maybe understood it incorrectly, and will have some negative, unwanted, unexpected consequences of that one. So as Bod and Molloy mentioned, that it can have quite different perception of what the process involved. So that is one of the problem that can happen with feedback. One of the problem with feedback is the impact on learning. And that actually happen because when we give the feedback, we are sure that we have one target, we have one important aim, which is to have impact on the learning. So one of the problem with experience of feedback, that maybe that kind of a process of feedback doesn't have any impact on learning. So the impact is the matter. Why some feedback failed? As some of the participants mentioned, maybe it's overcritical. It's exactly as you said. It could be just appraisal. So it's the kind of opposite one, and we will have a discussion regarding this one through the good practice, and we will call it as self-level, and that will be explained later. So when I just tell the student that, oh, you did good job, or it's well done, you are very smart, and that's on, and that's all, that could be does it have impact on the learner in overall evaluation. However, it has some details that we will talk about. Maybe the receiver, the student, or the trainees are not interested. So Bod and Molloy just call it as what we term it feedback. It doesn't necessarily lead to positive effect on learner. So not every feedback is effective. One of the problem that with feedback is with being judged, and that is mentioned through the discussion, through the comments just recently. Some of the problem with feedback that the student will have resist the language of judgment, and this is one of the way that we don't like to see in the feedback. Okay, now we have an important question. Why do these problem exist? Actually, these problem happens because of some common understanding or common perception about the feedback that will be presented here, and that is mentioned by Bod and Molloy. They mentioned that the people or the educator, either as undergraduate professor or medical or faculty staff, or as a trainer, they believe all the feedback experience is good. Also, Bod and Molloy call it as the mirror, which means that not every big amount of feedback is effective. However, or large volume of feedback. So instead, the large volume of feedback can have a cognitive load on the feedback receiver, either as a student or a trainee. So at this situation, maybe there will be difficulties to prioritize the message, so difficult to implement the changes. One of the important conception that some people get or have about the feedback is they find the feedback is just telling a process, is a one side. And I really like the one comment that I have seen is, that it's the good feedback is bi-directional, which is the core speaking, or the core point for today's speaking. So the feedback, some people, they found the feedback is just a telling a process. It's only focused on the educator. It's just one side. So we have the educator as active part, and the receiver or the students just a passive one. We always, some people, when advise people about that, and when advise others to have a good experience of feedback, they always focus on the skills of giving, which is right by itself. However, limiting the feedback experience with only telling, with only the giver, this is the problem. So the educator has the whole the whole function or whole responsibility to observe the learner and then give the feedback and predict point for improvement. So how we can change that? By the learner center and collaboration, and we will talk about that through our discussion today. One of the common conception about the feedback is the function of the feedback just end in telling. So when the educator just telling what did well or what need to improve, they found that the function just finish. However, what about after that section? So without helping, really help the student or the learner to go forward, the feedback is just seen as dangling data, as mentioned by Sadler. So one of the function of the feedback is just making change on the learner. I didn't like I didn't want to just to bother you with some theoretical background here. I just wanted at the end of this section is to focus or to see how Bod and Molloy see the feedback. They see feedback from different, or they have they can, or they state that the feedback has some feature. The first one is learner center, so we can see their definition from the beginning of the definition is the feedback is a process whereby learners obtaining information. It's not the doctor giving the feedback. So it is focused on the learner. It's important to have important of the external standard, and that will be clear through the principle and recommendation that we will talk today. The feedback is a process here. It is not a single act and finish. Always through the feedback, we have a comparison through the discussion with the learner between standard and current work. And this is one of the important part of the feedback. The feedback needs to lead to action. So that is the feedback that is stated and seen and believed by Bod and Molloy. Now, so if we are just moving to the best conception of the feedback, as we can see through the curriculum, as you have many times listen here that the curriculum is moving actually from teacher-centered to student-centered learner and education, also from the doctor-based care or practice to the patient-centered care. If I summarize or if I conclude the same or the sharing point between these two, the education and the care is moving actually from the giver center to the receiver center, and that is actually what is happening through the literature and feedback. And I really found that in the literature when I had a discussion with my supervisor, the PhD supervisor, I found that through the literature review that actually really the feedback literature is moving. The trend or the new direction of feedback is to consider the learner center or the receiver or recipient center feedback. This is just an example from residency education. Is a recent one. They have mentioned through the beginning that traditional definition and models is just old one, and that the feedback is moving to bi-directional, to more student center, or to the learner or a trainee center feedback. It's just published in 2019. And this is just an example of the feedback literature. So the delivery of the feedback has started to shift to the learner, and the student engagement is not isolated now. Effective feedback is actually started, as we will see through the discussion today. The feedback started from before going or before giving the feedback, then during action and after delivery. There is a term called a double duty of feedback, which is the feedback has two functions: the immediate performance, or improving the immediate performance, and also to building capacity of using feedback and self-regulatory skills, which is our today point. The first one regarding the best practice is what Hattie and Temperley call it. They have a very key paper. They believe that, or they stated that the effective feedback answers three questions: where I am going, which is telling the learner what's the target, what's the goal, and how I am going, which is telling them how they are good progressing to that goal, and where to next. So what's the next process? What's the plan to improve? The most important thing, I believe, which will be discussed in detail, the feedback levels. They call it as 4 levels. The task level, which is very common one, which talk and focus only on the task. The process one is another one, self-regulation level and self-level. These 4 levels will be our for the next 4 slides discussion. The first one, which is the task level, it is a simple one. It is just giving the learner what is wrong in their performance. If they have wrong, what is it, and what did they well? So let's say, for example, no, this is incorrect. This is wrong one. You should change it. Good. This is correct. This is blah, blah, blah. So it is a simple one. Based on literature, it is most common one. So work is correct or incorrect. How well is it correct? It could give some direction to acquire more or different correct information. The theme, or the most clear picture about this level, it is the surface knowledge. And maybe all of you or most of you know that in the cognitive theory of learning, we have 2 types of learning: surface learning and deep learning. In the task level, it's only focused on the surface knowledge. It doesn't generalize to others. So the learner can know which is wrong in this experience, in his or in her experience, but doesn't know why it is wrong, what is the right, how he can avoid that in others situation. So this is the task level. In experience, it's mostly combined with self level. For example, here when we say good student, it is correct. This is correct. And regarding the self level, I will talk that later. It is most effective in fault interpretation. For example, if the learner doing something wrong, and he believes that it's right, so it's effective here to guide the learner that this is not the one that we expect you to do. So although it is task level, although it's only surface knowledge, it is effective somewhere. And it's very important point here to mention. These 4 task level, I wouldn't say that some of these task level, based on the Bod and Molloy, based on Hattie and Temperley discussion, we don't have, some of these are not effective at all. However, it's based on or depends on the context, some kind of context or example. We only need task level or other level. So it helps in simple tasks. For example, here I mentioned just example, no, you need to choose a different point. This is incorrect. The process level, which is I would say that the other side of the feedback, the opposite of the task, it is specific to process underlying the task. So it's not surface learning such as acquisition, etc. However, it's a deep learning that involves the construction of meaning. Also, it's related to the relationship, cognitive process. So we can call it as understanding. This is the key part of this process, of this level. And here, as a speaker and also a learner, that I always consider this point when I give feedback. And I really remember an example from my PhD when I give a draft to my supervisors. I cannot forget that really a good experience with my supervisor when she showed me some kind of critical skills that I show, and she explained me why that happened, what's the critical kind of writing skills that I did, and why that happened. And because of that discussion, I really understood what is the critical writing, and by that discussion, I was able to generalize that to another section, to another kind of paper, to another kind of literature review when I just write it down in my thesis. So it's a deep one. It is a discussion. It gives the learner, the receiver, information about what is the good one and why it is good. So the learner will have a complete structure, a deep one, to about a specific task, either in the writing skills, as what happened with me, or in the clinical, as most of us interested in. So this is more effective in enhancing deeper learning. For example, when saying, is there a connecting theme between these different points? When we give feedback that connect something different, the learner will have a deeper understanding the relationship between different points. So that's one process or one level of the feedback. One of the key level of feedback that Hattie and Temperley stated is the self-regulation level, and that kind of level will be discussed in detail in the next principle or next framework. It support the control and confidence of the learner. It also it addresses the way that students monitor, direct, and regulate the action toward learning goal. One of the important part of the feedback is to encourage a student to have internal kind of feedback. We can call it as a self-assessment, and that will be discussed later again. We can encourage the learner or the trainee to have self-assessment skill and self-regulation development. The self-level, the last one, is only consider a self issue. For example, like when we give a praise, for example, you are smart. When I just no more talk about the process of, when I no more, sorry, talk about the task, either as just a task or a process. No, at this level, we are just talking about a human as a person. So for example, I say you are smart, you are good, and that is kindly, although it is least learning related. However, it could be effective in some situation. For example, when the student or the trainee has some kind of low efficacy or low feeling of efficacy, so we can support that kind of feeling. So it's effective in somewhere. However, it is the least one through or from related, I mean, in comparison to the other levels. One of this is the other framework that Nichol and Macfarlane, they have a 7 principle of feedback to support self-regulated learning in formative assessment culture or formative assessment process. First of all, just to have a quick review, what is formative? When we talk about formative, we are talking about two direction or two different purpose of feedback. The feedback is either to give the assessment for the assessment just to develop the learning, or to have judgment about the learning. So when we have, for this reason, they call it as assessment for learning versus assessment of learning. So when we want to assess the student just to have idea and sorry, to have judgment, to pass, fail, etc., this is assessment formative. And we when have assessment only for development purpose, to giving the feedback, we call it as formative. And by the way, most of us know that the feedback here is the cornerstone of the process. I mean, in the formative assessment. We can call it as feedback-based versus grade-based assessment. It's different naming. However, the idea is the same here. So again, our framework here is talk about how we can support the self-regulated learning skills among learner in formative assessment. Since the formative assessment is a very good environment for feedback. First one, when they talk about the principle of feedback, they have mentioned that through the feedback, we should support the trainees or a student to understand how the excellent performance should be. And this is actually the first principle of feedback. Through the feedback, the target, the criteria, the good practice should be understood clearly from the side of the student. However, for example, here the suggested a guideline here, or we can call it as recommendation or strategies, is to describe assessment criteria through discussion with the learner, providing exemplar, which is example of what we want you as a learner to do, what I expected you to do, is very important here. It's very important to have a discussion and reflection on the criteria. Also, we can have a discussion with the learner, so that kind of discussion make the criteria of good performance is clear among the feedback receiver or the trainee or the learner, etc. One of the important principle is to facilitate the skills of self-assessment through a reflection process. It's very important through the feedback is to engage the trainees or the student to identify by themselves, and we will talk about the bad and Molloy marks of feedback later, and they reflect that kind of strategy. All of us know that the bundled method, which is reflecting kind of that feedback. So we encourage the trainees to identify the standard performance, then contrasting their performance against that, which is important to being facilitated. And this is very important point here, which is the key word here, I believe, is facilitating. Maybe some of the medical educators believe that the self-assessment is not effective because the self-assessment is just based on self, and the student doesn't have metacognitive ability to be a self-assessor. And here the situation is different because the self-assessment is facilitated actually through the discussion with expert, either as a senior as a trainer consultant, or as a medical or faculty member in the medical school. So we can also request the trainees to identify their strengths and weaknesses against the identified standards. One of the principle is to giving high quality of feedback. And honestly, when I started my webinar, my speaking, when I said that the traditional advices about feedback is to focus only on the giver, and this is what I mean here. The third principle is giving the giver some idea of a skills of feedback, and the idea here actually in Nichol and McFarlane is is not limiting the feedback experience in only this kind of principle or skill, which is the giving skill. Here, the Nicole and McFarlane give some strategies is to relate, give a clear kind of feedback, clearly related to the standard. It is a clear one again. It's informative, so it is a rich one that it's not important to be a large volume, as I said at the beginning, but it's informative. So the student or the receiver can get benefit from that feedback. It's a balance of between strengths and weaknesses. And again, some of the participants mentioned that some of the negative experience of feedback that is not balanced, only critiques and only mention the weaknesses. One of the participants nicely mentioned that the good feedback is on time. That as he or she mentioned, it's a timely. Again, it's only not all. It's not only about strengths and weaknesses, but also more than that, the good feedback is to move to the advices and recommendation for the next practice or next step. I believe maybe one of the important corner part of the Nicole and McFarlane is to develop or to consider the dialogue. When I say dialogue as the versus of monologue, the monologue is only one directional, and this is also mentioned at the beginning from our participant today. It's a teacher or a professor or a trainer to a trainee. It's only one direction. The receiver is a passive. He just receiving some advices. Doesn't have any chance of talk, to ask, to negotiate, etc. So I believe that understanding the message is very important. If the message did not or not will be or not clearly understood, there will be not clear or good progress or development. And this is one of the important. If you remember that when I started to talk about the most common problem with feedback, one of the common problem with feedback is the problem with sharing meaning. So in that section, we consider that the learner is adult, is not no more the adult. So he has the right to ask, to negotiate, to be asked what he prefer, and that is one of the principle of Nicole, as we will mention. So we can promoting self-esteem through the feedback. Like praising, and also praising is better to be related to strategic behavior that done by the trainee. For example, I like the way that you did. It is very smart way. So it's not only a task. It's not only a self level. However, it's relating that to the task or the strategies that the learner have done or has done. Trainees should have opportunity to close the gap. It's important to have to observe the change. Also, we can give the learner, if that is possible, to have a chances to repeat the performance, to see the performance or the skills how it was well developed. So we can call it like a 2 stages of performance. One of the important point is to provide information to teachers or the educator that can help to shape teaching. So, for example, giving information from trainees about the priority of learning. Also, asking the learner, what do you like us to do? What kind of feedback that you would like to have? And this is again part of the adult learner. So when we ask the student that which part of the performance you would like us to give feedback, what's the interesting point from your side? And this is very important point in the adult learner life. Lastly, here or finally, the Molloy and Booth just give us a picture about traditional. They call it as Mark 1, and the Mark 2, which is the next slide, which is talking about the learner as a centered part of the feedback. They show us the process that we maybe some of us have seen that through the experience, that the student is involved in activity, in such activity. The information is given to the student from as a one side. Then that the student will be involved in other activity. Again, the feedback is given, and here is the in the best chance of that kind of experience, because some people, that some student giving or are given feedback just one time without giving a chance to have be involved in other activity. So so this is mark one, they call it. The second one, which they what we conclude and really recommend through their book, is to have a kind of experience. We Bundleton method is something that reflecting this kind of a framework or experience of practice of feedback. We don't have any more passive learner. The learner is a cornerstone of this kind of experience. So the first one, before actually the activity happened or started, orientation of standards of work and purpose of feedback is given clearly to the learner. The learner is involved in an activity. The student or the learner judge work, and there should be a ask for specific feedback. Other expert, either as a senior or other senior, or other faculty, other trainer, can judge work and judge the feedback, the internal feedback that happened. We will have after that a compare judgment between two, and this is what I called as facilitated self-assessment or facilitated internal feedback. So there will be a comparison, then will be agreed plan for future to improve the work. After that, the student or the learner can be involved in other activity. So the seventh feature of this mark of feedback that Bod and Molloy have mentioned, sorry. So it's not only the student is oriented about the standard, however, also the purpose of feedback. So the purpose of feedback is to developing and to see how you can judge yourself and etc. Number two is the feature of this one, that the learner has a chance to judge own work. There is a matter for priority here, since the adult learner is involved in the discussion. The external feedback is one of the important one here. So it is facilitation. There's a facilitation. There is a kind of balance between internal and external. So with a time, with a future, with a kind of experience frequencies of this feedback, the internal feedback can be more valid, more accurate, based on comparison between internal and external. There is a comparative process, as I have mentioned. It's internal versus external. There will be agreed improvement plan based on that mark, and there is implementation on a later task. Let's say now talk about the factors, and I really believe that through, it's not only as a researcher, also as a practitioner, as I would say, I would talk myself as a faculty member in the school. There is a factor actually, and I really believe and be sure that when we talk about this kind of a practice, we will have some challenges and factor that control our experience. The first one is the reality as applicability. To what extent in the reality that we can apply that recommendation? For example, the time cost, and this is very important one. Assessment culture here is very important because I really mentioned that. I mentioned that because I really believe that some authors, some medical educationists, I have seen that they don't recommend to give feedback in the summative kind of culture. It's only effective, or it's most effective informative, and this is one of the of the evidence, it's by Harrison. They have mentioned, or they have published a series of studies about the formative assessment. They have seen that through the abstract, as you can see here, that the learner is giving the most benefit of feedback in formative, not on summative. And they have actually the justification here. In the summative assessment, that the most important focus of the learner is only on the mark, on the pass fail. So in the summative, they have a target, they want to pay the pass, and they want to know their grade. The formative is the most suitable environment for feedback, since it is a safe one. It is only focused on feedback, not others like the grade. Hierarchy, and this is consider or mention one of the Saudi studies. They have mentioned the big distance between student and faculty. Actually, this is a study based on undergraduate, but it could be reflected through the postgraduate medical education. They have found that the big distance between student and faculty, specifically the professor or senior one, they found that different make the student fear to debate, and really just highlight it here because it's a key word here. And this is again, if we relate that to the recommendation, one of the most important part of feedback is to have a debate between the faculty and student. For example, the student or the trainees can ask why you have mentioned that. I did well actually in that one. And that could happen because the trainees have fault understanding about the situation. And if he or she didn't ask this question, the fault or the wrong interpretation will be remain in his or in her mind. So the debate, the discussion is very important. And the hierarchy, again, based on that study, is a challenge factor. One of the actually the one that I have seen is the recipient motivation. I'm just here to also see if you later want to mention from your experience what else you have seen that some factor that challenge the feedback experience or practice. So if we can conclude that and say not all feedback is effective. The big feedback or the large volume of feedback is not necessary to be effective. When I say the best practice of feedback, it doesn't mean the only effective one. If I translate that clearly, bi-directional feedback is the most effective one, but doesn't mean that it's the only one, because one direction, it could have some benefit in somewhere in the student practice or the student learning. The practice doesn't come as a perfect without any challenge. Our recipient is no more, they are adult learner who would like to talk and would like to understand much better. And it is very important point here to have bi-directional, as Nicole and Macfarlane call it, as a dialogue. The model of feedback that I presented today, they have sharing the same meaning, but they just presented in slightly different way. So I just like it to present this one. I really apologize if I just bother you with different one and give you some cognitive workload. However, I didn't like to leave one of these without presenting it in our today speaking. Again, I am speaking today, a speaker and a learner, actually, in the field of feedback. I always learning from our experience and from our perspective. Thank you for listening, and I'm just here to hear any to have or to see any discussion and comment.
Brilliant. I really enjoyed the talk. It's full of evidence and it filled a gap of a knowledge for lots of people dealing with student in any training program. So thank you very much. We really enjoyed it a lot. I'm going to open the door for any questions, and I can see Dr. Mohammed Al Mansour has raised his hands. Dr. Mansour is also a medical educator, is very active in medical educations in Saudi Arabia and the region. So we really will be honored to have Dr. Mansour with us. So just Dr. Mansour, put your question, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for Sesame to have our new champion, Dr. Abdul Mohsen. I'm really glad that you joined the club. It is really important to have all of our medical educators, those having their degrees and they are enthusiastic to practice the medical education in the context of Saudi field. My concern, Dr. Abdul Mohsen, regarding the factor influencing that you put it in the end, it's really important. What you describe is very nice model, but when we came to get all of these models of feedback down to the practice, actually we have more influencing factors. We need to put it in our mind. One of the important factor is the context. So I think the context of giving and receiving the feedback in our context as a healthcare providers, either in medical school or in the hospitals or in training programs. So it is totally variable. So you will find yourself in a rush of time. You need to give immediate feedback, timely based, and at the same time, you don't have the full, luxury to discuss, debate, dialogue with the student or with the trainee about those criteria, those standards, why you put this, why you don't put this. So I think some literature of feedback in medical education is more fit to the postgraduate student in master and PhD, while the supervisor, he has 2 or 3 students, they will be with him for 4 or 5 years. He know them, and all of these harmony is going on, and all of this time is there. So my concern is we need to focus about the context and get the benefit out of the models with the practical tips. This is the number one. Number two, I think maybe not only the recipient motivation, and I think also the provider motivation is really a challenging in our context because a lot of our educators, they are doing multiple roles and job in the same time. So we are loading them with a lot of rules that we need them to finish it. And at the same time, we need them to give the optimum feedback. So the motivation from my own experience to give a feedback is variable from the educators and as well from the recipients. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Okay, so Dr. Mohammed, first of all, I really like your comment or your talk. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed is the head of medical education department in King Saud University. Very honored to have a speaking with all of you today. Dr. Mohammed, yes, I agree with you. For this reason, I put it that. Yes, it is a nice add to have a giver motivation. But for this reason, we run like these webinars to advise, to support, or to encourage our colleagues to see the the kind of recommended the practice of feedback. Regarding the applicability, I really agree with you, Dr. Muhammad. The question is it that 100% of time of chances of feedback is not applicable or is impossible to implement this one? Let's say, Dr. Muhammad, that this is my viewpoint, and I just believe that when we have a full or the best picture of feedback, when I just wanted to translate it to experience or in a practice, I will do my best to have that. If I don't have a chance to have 100%, at least I have 70, 60. At least as I have a short discussion with the receiver, with the recipient. At least as a short discussion. What else? Did you get my point? To run or to experience the process kind of level that I mentioned, which is very important one. And that is when I see this literature recommended, I really believe that they have sharing the same problem with us. They know that the giver is very busy, have a schedule of many roles, as you have mentioned. So regarding my point, this is just my perspective, is to understand or to get the idea of the best practice of feedback and to translate it as possible here, as possible. If not possible, so يعني لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها يعني. So otherwise, I agree with you, Doctor. It's very important to see the context. If it's not applicable, so we call it in other way the feasibility. If not feasible, to give that kind of feedback, to have a directional, a bi-directional. So this is something over our ability. So thank you. I agree with you, Dr. Muhammad.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Mohsen. We have one more question here from Dr. Ahmed Al-Hazmi, who is a medical educator as well in the western part of Saudi Arabia. So Dr. Hazmi, please put your questions. Maybe Dr. Hazmi is not readily available.
But Doctor, I see he said unmute me.
Unmute, he's able to talk. There's no, I give the permission to everybody. Anyway, we're gonna give the talk to Dr. Mona if she wanna say something. All right, then Yusra, Dr. Yusra.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Everyone.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Yusra.
I'm from Iraq, from Nineveh College of Medicine. When I teach my student, I want to give them their feedback, but sometimes they feel anxious or angry. How can I combat this problem? And thank you.
Okay, that is really important and really mentioned in the literature and also seen in our experience. I believe, Doctora, the orientation about the feedback purpose is very important here. The unrelation between the feedback and marks, which is very sensitive one, is very important. I got a research, I mean, through my PhD, I found that through my focus group discussion with the student, I have actually concluded that through kind of mixed or through a kind of a triangulation between staff interview and student also discussion. The student, specifically medical student who got from high school, they are one of the best students who graduated from high or secondary school without being used to kind of negative feedback. And this is one of the core reason why some medical student didn't receive. Actually, it's only one reason I know. I believe from my side that orientation about feedback is very important, and relation between the feedback and marks is very important. And this is one of the things that I have heard from our student that they fear, they worried about when they receive negative feedback, it means that they have low grade or something like this one. So this is my point that is in my
Thank you.
mind now.
Thank you very much. I think we are on time, concluding this beautiful sessions. I repeated my gratitude to Dr. Abdel Mohsen Al-Umair, and hopefully we will see you in the next webinar, which going to be interesting titles. The role of social media in medical education will be done by Dr. Kamal Ata, and inshallah it will be on the 5th of March, same time, 8 o'clock. Thank you very much for attending the webinars, and we are looking forward to seeing you on the next one on March 8th. Have a great day wherever you were. Thank you very
Dr.
much.
Ali.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Ali, and thank you for all of the participants today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.